Every now and then there are these rumors or reports that do the rounds about SBI looking at the overseas market to do an acquisition. Do you feel compelled to buy something overseas? Is there anything in the works?
Not particularly, because you do an acquisition when there are entry barriers. For example, in Indonesia. Now, Indonesia, you can't go in either with a new branch or with a new subsidiary. So, only way you can get a foothold in the market is by acquisition. Whereas, in all other geographies, there is almost unrestricted entry barrier, the unrestricted access. For example, in South Africa or UK, you can open as many branches. In Germany, even in Australia, if you want to start retail operations, you have to do by way of a subsidiary. But if you are ready with the capital, if you are ready with your blueprint, you can possibly do it in the next 3 months. So you will go for an acquisition, because in an acquisition you pay a significant premium to the book. We consider that necessary only when there are entry barriers in the market. And today we are present in almost all important markets of the world. So we don't see a particular need for doing acquisitions.
The merger of associate banks, what's the progress on that? What can we see?
That's something that's always on the table, but each merger cost about 2,000 crores in terms of capital. So that is why we have not moved forward with any. And the associate banks, even today, are pretty well capitalized and pretty well positioned in terms of their business. So merger possibly takes about 2 years to digest. Since we are not contemplating one in this financial year, then it gets pushed back to the next financial year, if any.
So ideally, would you be comfortable with even continuing under the current structure where the current associate banks just stay the way they are?
See, from a long-term perspective, the argument for merger is very strong. The economic argument for merger is very strong, provided there is an equally strong urge from the banks which are to be taken up for merger. So I would think that over the next 5 to 10 years, maybe all these banks would be merged. But that also we have to recognize, every merger requires capital. So it should not be done in a manner that it impairs the capital adequacy ratio of the bank. So keeping both these objectives and both these standards in mind, merger should be taken forward.
Now, also one big challenge for State Bank of India is costs, getting your costs under control. How are you working on that?
No, cost not particularly. For example, our cost to income ratio is 46%, which is better than even some of the private sector banks, because we are quite frugal in our expenditure and we have large premises which are our own. So therefore, our rental costs are much less. And in terms of staff costs, we are getting a huge demographic dividend, because approximately 5,000 to 7,000 employees are retiring. And even if you take in a similar number or slightly higher number of new entrants, the cost thereof, because the retiring employees at the peak of the scale and the new employees at the bottom of the scale, so there is some cost compression coming in, and the average growth in revenues are constantly running ahead of the increase in cost.
But where would you ideally like to see your cost income ratio at?
Cost to income ratio, possibly we should keep a target of, the difficulty is that when I put 40%, market says, oh, you put at 40%, you didn't result that. But I always believe that the target should be a little more aggressive. So I would like to see 42 to 43%. But even at 46%, we are throwing in an RO, return on net worth, of about 18.5%, which is pretty good.
Now, Mr. Chaudhuri, you've been a lone campaigner against the CRR, and you've been saying that CRR must go. Why would you need that?
No, I always wonder that CRR is an interest-free contribution from the banks to the Reserve Bank. Now, what is the purpose of CRR? Let us, finalize our thoughts on that. If it is to suck out liquidity from the system in order to stabilize the price situation, then why should CRR not be there on insurance and mutual funds, who also mobilize people's savings? And globally, CRR is not there at all. And even if there is CRR, for example, we were in Germany last month, the CRR is 1% both for banks and insurance. So CRR puts the banks at a competitive disadvantage, because the funds that we mobilize have a cost. So if 4% of your liability assets don't give any income, then the balance 96% have to pay for 100. So to that extent, it increases the cost of borrowing in the economy. And secondly, the total mobilization of CRR is 300,000 crores, 3 lakh crore. Now the question I always ask is it right in a capital scarce economy to lock away 3 lakh crores and not put it to any use? And I always feel that, if this 3 lakh crore is spent into the economy, be it for building roads, school, hospital, airports, anything, it would do so much good to the economy. And I think our economy would have been possibly 20% larger than what it is today if we had done away with CRR 10 years back, which means our revenues would have been 20% higher, which also means perhaps 20% more people would have been working. It would have been so good for everybody.
Right, but the RBI has said that there is going to be no discussion on CRR. I think they've made a final statement on that. Insurance companies say that their business model is different, so why are you asking, trying to impose a CRR on us? So somewhere is, Pratip Chaudhuri losing the argument.
No, it's not a losing the argument. It started a debate. And I don't think RBI has slammed the door on discussions. In fact, I'm very grateful that RBI at every point has recognized the validity of the arguments. And if you see in the last 1.5 years, the CRR has been brought down very significantly from 6% to 4.25% today. And consequent to that, the banks have also progressively reduced the base rates, which means the transmission of that monetary policy is happening. And even I think Government of India has, stated generally that, okay, if you don't want to do away with the CRR, please pay interest on the CRR. Now, supposing, just for a matter of calculation, we pay 50,000 crores as CRR. Even if we get 8% return on that, so we earn 4,000 crore more. 35% of that, how much would be? 1,400 crore goes to government as tax, and 2,600 crore comes back to the bank as profits. So we'll require less capital from the government. We'll contribute more to the national exchequer.
All right, Mr. Chaudhuri. Thank you very much.
Thank you.